Photography's changing. The world's changing. Gear's changing. Lighting's changing. Styles are changing. Trends are changing. Let's have a conversation about that. Stay tuned. Hey gang, I am Joe Edelman, and thank you for tuning in for another live episode of The Last Frame. It's great to see all of you. You know the drill. Do me a favor, please, in that chat window, leave your name, let me know you're here and where you're watching from. All of you are part of a growing global community of photographers in over 100 countries that tune in to watch The Last Frame live every week. Already, we've got Lawrence in Rugby, England, John in Harrisburg, Steve in Michigan. I got Michael in Pretoria, South Africa, Charlie in North Carolina, Marquise in North Carolina. Who else did I see? I saw Wayne from the future in Thursday in New Zealand. Lynn in upstate New York. Vincent's here from Tennessee. Alvin in Virginia. Robert in New Jersey. Alan's here from Denmark. David in San Diego. Thank you all. Dan is here from Canada. It's great to see you. So just a couple of announcements, some little housekeeping stuff to bring folks up to speed really quick. But here's what I want before I tell you those so that we can have a productive conversation tonight. I'm not planning on sitting here and just predicting the future and kind of saying, hey, everything's changing, suck it up, deal with it. Really what I want is I need your help. I want to know from you. What changes are you seeing? And honestly, I'm asking for your help in this because I'm working on a little project and need to do some writing that goes along with it, which I'm going to share with everyone. You'll all get to see the results of this, but I want to talk about how the photography world, whether it be the business, whether it be the gear, the cameras, whether it be trends, whatever it is, I want to talk about how it's changing, how it's evolving, because it is a lot and really rapidly. So I would love to have your input while I'm going through these couple of announcements. Start typing in the chat. Let me know, what changes are you seeing? And look, it can be changes that you don't like, but do me a favor. Let's be productive and let's try and be positive about it, right? If it's something that you don't like, that's okay, but don't type it with judgment. Type it with an explanation as to why you think it's a bad thing. And I totally respect that. And I would love that input. Okay. So please, I'm asking, if you're here, help me out. What changes are you seeing in our photography world? Okay. So a couple of notes though, and this one's for all of you because it's free. So I hope that you'll take advantage of it. There's 2 dates coming up that I want you to jot down. The first one is this coming Monday. So that's going to be October 11th at 5 p.m. Eastern time in the US. I'm going to be presenting, and I'm really honored to be presenting for the B&H Event Space, right? Based in New York. For those of you that may not be in the United States, B&H is like the largest physical camera store, probably in the world, but definitely in the United States. And I'm going to be doing a 2-part presentation. So this coming Monday, October 11th, and you can watch it from anywhere in the world, and it's completely free. It's going to be live streamed on YouTube and also on Facebook. And the best part of it is if you can't make it live, you'll be able to watch it recorded. But here's what I'm going to ask you, right? The first part is Monday. It's called the Art of Creative Portraiture, when creativity is actually the subject. Okay, so we're not going to be talking about traditional portrait rules and all that kind of stuff. We're really going to be talking about creativity as it applies to portraiture and the kind of work that I do. Question I frequently get that I'd like to joke with people about is, where do you get all these crazy ideas, Joe? Depending on my mood, my first answer is to look somebody straight in the face and say drugs. But I promise it's not drugs, okay? So that's what I'm going to talk about, and that's what I'm going to break down for you guys. But on this page, and I'm going to share the link with you in the chat, and I will make sure these links are also under the video when we're done. Do me a favor and register, okay? Up at the top there, you see the button, register to watch online. Now, for those of you that are smart, Okay. I'll tell you what's happening here, right? All you need to do is show up Monday and click that link. There it is. There, like, you don't actually have to register. Registering simply helps me because you're letting B&H know that they made a good choice to have me speak. That's all. So do me a favor, right? And they're going to put you on their email list and, of course, send you emails that will give you gas, gear acquisition syndrome, right? But please do sign up. And then the second one is October 28th, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just scroll down and we'll get to the date. There's the 11th. And that's on a Thursday. Where is it here? And I'll share the link for the second one. Yeah, part 2 is October 28th, also at 5 p.m. Eastern time in the US. And so that is part 2 of the discussion because they have like a hard time limit of 1 hour on their live presentations that they do online. And you guys know I can't get it done in an hour. So we're going to do 2 full hours, but we have to split it up over 2 dates. So that's how that's going to work. Also coming up, let me switch over to my website here on, there it is, November 9th. For those of you that are PPA members, I'm going to be doing a webinar for PPA, Effective Content Generation for Photographers. So a lot of you get really excited when I do last frames or videos about marketing and social media and all that kind of stuff. And so, one of the realities of what we're really doing on social media, gang, as a photographer, it's not about your pictures. It's not about showing pictures. It's actually creating good content that connects with potential customers, or even if you don't want the business, connects with potential followers, but also provides value, right? That's what it's all about. So for you PPA members, I'll share the link for you guys also, okay? When you get to the link, scroll down and you'll see it. Tuesday, November 9th, Effective Content Generation for Photographers. That is at 2 p.m. Eastern time. It's again a 1 hour program. Really what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sharing a lot of the tricks that I use for being able to get my articles together, writing really good captions for social media posts, all of that kind of stuff. And really, you know how I do it. It's all about like why. Why do these things work? Why are they important? To give you a better understanding of why you should consider doing these extra things to really make your stuff stand out online. But believe me, it's not good enough to just be a good photographer. It's not good enough to just post good pictures. Not if you want people to follow you, and not if you want to make money. There's a lot more to it than that. So those are some upcoming events, and you can find all of my upcoming speaking events on my website. I'm going to put the link for that in there also so that you have that. And already I see a couple good observations come in here. So I want to start out with your observations. I've got a few of my own. Shocker, right? But I want to start out with some of yours and keep them coming, gang. Come on. I know you guys are seeing a lot of things, all right? And again, I don't mind if you want to talk about something that you see and you don't like it. You think it's a really bad thing. I just don't want any like, oh, this sucks. Give me this sucks. Why? Okay? And then we can have a discussion. That's the whole point. So let's see here. What I got? Scrolling on up. First one that came in was from Enigmagic73, the implementation of AI into the editing process. And that's a great one. That's one that should be really, really high on the list of changes. And I'm curious because I've talked about the AI stuff before. I did a talk chat interview with a company in Tel Aviv, Israel, Imagine AI, who is doing some really, really, really awesome AI processing services out of Lightroom as kind of a Lightroom tie-in. What do you guys honestly think about that? Does it scare you? Does it not bother you? In other words, do you feel it's nothing that actually has an impact on you? Is it something that you feel, 'cause look, I know some of you think this AI stuff just completely ruins photography. I know some of you are, and it's okay if that's how you feel. just, we don't want to judge people for it, but it means in terms of you don't want to do it or you don't want to embrace it, that's cool, right? I know some of you are traditionalists and don't want the technology that's going to do so much of the work for you. And you feel that it's kind of like cheating to do it all or to have the computers do it for you. So let me know your thoughts. And we're going to jump around on things here. Come on. Let's get you guys to type for me tonight. All right. Another one after that was from Vincent's Boudoir. He said, I noticed cameras to digital to mirrorless, which involve with technology. Also see how photographers are editing images. Also, besides sitting at a desk, we use phones and tablets, mostly the tech. And you know what? I think that tech indeed is a driver behind, I'd say probably more than 50% of the changes that we're seeing, because we are like, if you're not noticing, gang, if you're not noticing that there's a lot of dramatic changes happening with the technology. And when I say technology, I'm talking cameras, lenses, I'm talking about accessories, I'm talking about lighting, especially. And you know what? Even these, it's an iPhone 13. These things are pretty amazing. They just are, right? So if you're not noticing that technology that's happening, you kind of got your head in the sand, right? But I do think, Vincent, that there is a lot of changes that I'm seeing, and maybe it's because I'm an old guy and I've been around for a while, right? But I'm seeing a lot of changes that are happening in terms of what people want from photography. So it's not just what people like in terms of like a finished photograph. There's a lot of old timers, a lot of traditionalists that look at the idea of like Instagram filters or presets, right? And we know presets are one of those things people either love them or hate them. A lot of people think I hate presets. I don't hate presets. Presets make sense. However, what I hate about presets are not the presets, but the lazy photographers that use them. Now, don't misquote me. I didn't say all photographers who use presets are lazy. I said I hate the lazy photographers that use them. So what do I mean? It's real simple. The people that spend money on presets thinking that it's going to make their pictures look as good as somebody else's, whoever made the presets. And then all they do is use it like a one-click Instagram filter. Drop the presets onto the picture. Okay. And they are, for whatever reason, too foolish to realize that they don't shoot in the same style as that photographer whose presets they bought. So their pictures don't look nearly as good. So really what they're doing is they're actually degrading their images. And at best, they're just making their images look like cheap copies of somebody else. So the thing with presets is understanding that they're kind of a style guide that gets you into a range in terms of a look and a feel of an image, but you still need to do some massaging and tweaking to the settings to really tune it in. Back in the film days, even when you couldn't do all this Photoshop stuff, photographers, myself included, man, I labored for hours. If I was printing stuff, especially for my portfolio, or if I was going to enter something in a contest, or if it was going to hang up on a wall, get framed and hang on a wall, I would labor for hours in the darkroom, dodging and burning and taking my little coat hanger with the quarter, taped on the end of it and working through that print to get it just right. And then for some reason, digital comes along and a lot of people don't seem to want to be able to, or I shouldn't say be able to, but a lot of people don't seem to want to put the time in to do that. And I think that's unfortunate. It's great that we can take these amazing pictures pretty much right out of camera. But there's always room. There's always opportunity for improvement, right? That's the challenge there. So let's see. And Alvin, thank you for the congratulations about B&H. It is exciting. It's been a while. Actually, it's been a while doing, kind of some high profile presentations in general with all the trade shows and everything getting canceled. So I'm excited to, be doing this with B&H and to kind of be recognized for that. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Saad, I think it's going to happen anyway, so I'm embracing it with all my power. And you know what? You and I are on the same page. Even though I'm one of the older guys in the business, I love this technology. I love these changes. I haven't seen a change yet that's happening right now that I don't like. Now, are there changes that frustrate me? Because I don't necessarily think that they have value, or I think that there are better ways to go about it. Sure. But you know what? There's a reason why you don't hear me talk about them very often, because it's not up to me to decide that for other people, right? So at the end of the day, the world evolves. You guys have heard me say that many, many times. I have no desire to be a dinosaur. And that's not why I embrace the change. I embrace the change because all of this change, all this new stuff, and I don't mean like new gear that's just fun. I mean new things that change what we can do as photographers. I love it because of the creative possibilities that it opens up. That's amazing, right? It just simply is. So also from Saad, AI and tech in general, the reason I win new clients while keeping costs low enough to give big bucks without hurting, or to get big bucks without hurting the client's pocket. And indeed, I mean, as a species, not to get like overly scientific here, but it's just, very legitimate. As a species, humans continue to evolve in what is considered actually a very lazy way. And I'm not insulting anyone. What I mean is we strive to reduce the amount of work we have to do. As a species, we strive to make things easier. We strive to find simpler ways to do it, quicker ways to do it. Even with the tech, all this tech that we're talking about, we work to make tech smaller, lighter, faster, and more powerful. Unless, of course, you're a Canon or Nikon or Sony user, and then they make it faster and more powerful, but just a lot bigger and heavier. God knows why. I mean, that's a trend that we're seeing. I do think that you'll see that trend hit a brick wall soon. People are not going to keep spending $2,000 and $3,000 on 6-pound lenses. Why? Right? Why? That's just a byproduct of companies not working hard enough to make the product smaller, lighter, etc. Because they're making those lenses fast. That's why they're big. They'll get them smaller because people just are not going to keep shelling out that kind of money and then having to deal with something that's that big. It's not practical for so many genres of photography, right? So let's see what else we got here from Baxter. Whilst tech is desk killing the process, it will never replace the photographer's vision and intent. The end consumer does not care about the journey, just the destination. And I completely agree. And that's the thing where I think Baxter, and I'm not saying that you're insinuating this, but I do hear a lot of photographers, the reason why they dislike the tech and all the advancements in the tech and AI and all that kind of stuff is because they feel like it's almost like a computer replacing a human. And I don't see it that way at all. Now, obviously we read about in the news where, like at warehouses and a lot of factories, people lost jobs because they were able to put robots in to do these manual tasks. And this is, I really see this as a different conversation, right? In that situation, yes, it's a shame because it displaced human workers for the sake of profit. And so we can have a whole separate discussion there sometime. But when it comes to the photography, I completely agree with your statement, Baxter, about, at the end of the day, it's about the finished product. People don't really care how you got there. And, with photography, there's kind of two sides to every photograph. I hate to say two halves because for me, it's not equal halves. For me, it's an 80%, 20%, literally. 20% of my pictures are the technical things, which you still better have a solid foundation of photography if you want to be consistent, if you want to do technically good work. You still have to put effort into it. You still have to really work at it. But part of the way you accomplish all that is to actually learn it and to practice so that it becomes instinctual. Since I photograph people, 80% of my time in every picture, so, 20% is tech, 80% is the creativity, the human interaction, the idea. It's working that shot and creating that image. So it's not necessarily a 50-50 split, but there are still, those two halves. So for me, so think about that now. Also supports one of the reasons why I love this tech. Since I'm putting 80% of my effort into something that a computer can't automate, at least not yet. That's the interaction with the people and the creativity. The more of the 20% that I can automate with a computer effectively. And by the way, when I say computer, I'm talking about our cameras. I'm talking about our computers because our cameras are computers, right? The more of that I can automate and make it even more simple for me to do, the better. I mean, wouldn't it be awesome if I could do exactly what I'm doing now and only have to use 10% of my bandwidth on the tech and then have 90% of my bandwidth for what's in front of the camera, for my interaction with that subject, for the ideas, for creating, for, conceiving what I'm working with? That would be awesome. Like really, really awesome. So, and that's part of the reason why I love these changes and I love this technology that's coming. Steve, I think Bird IAF is pretty amazing. Yeah, I mean, and actually, the AIs that they're creating, and some companies are calling it AI, some are just calling it straight up really fast autofocus. But the autofocus technology that we have for faces and animals and even objects like trains and planes and all that kind of stuff, um, it is truly amazing. I mean, if you've been taking pictures for 20 or 30 years, even just as a hobby, imagine back to 20 or 30 years ago, as somebody told you that autofocus was going to do what it's doing now. Like, we would have looked at them like they were like, watching too many sci-fi films. So it's absolutely incredible what we're seeing in terms of the autofocus technology. And even for that, I'm thrilled. You know, I started, I started in the dark ages. There was no autofocus when I started. There was no such thing. I started when the first zoom lenses were first being released, and they were crap. I mean, they really were crap. Back in the day, Sigma, Tamron, today, right? They're great companies, great glass. In fact, what a lot of people don't realize is Sigma and Tamron make some of the lenses for the main camera manufacturers, right? It's not a big secret, but not everybody realizes that. Great companies, great optics. When those companies started, they sucked. I mean, they just did. Their lenses were not the greatest quality at all. But they became popular very, very quickly because they were so much less expensive than, buying a Nikon brand lens or buying a Canon lens. So back in the day, like, yeah, there was just no comparison at all. So who's that from? Dan, thank you so much for the super chat, man. Okay. I'll get to your statement here in just a second. Thank you. So let's see, where was my next one here? Baxter, presets and AI will tend to homogenize the end result. It will make it more difficult for your work to stand out from the crowd. Baxter, yes and no. So again, this is one of those ones I agree with part of what you're saying, and I agree with what I think is your intent. But just to be fair, ImagingUSA, the company that I interviewed for TogChat, if you have an opportunity to listen to that episode of the broadcast, they're actually building AIs based on your own style. So essentially, you're creating your own presets. And what they're doing is they're creating their AI not to homogenize and make your work generic, but to basically learn your way of processing, your methodology. And then from there, they are building the presets based upon what you do, which is a lot different than you saying, you know what, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to create my own presets, right? It's basically just the computer observing your choices in the develop panel and the way you process your images, and it's building an AI based on what you do. But you're correct, which is what I said before. If you just like grab presets and throw them on your pictures and you don't really, manipulate that preset to your image and the way you shot that image, then yeah, it is going to homogenize your work. It's not going to stand out from a crowd. It's really going to make your work quite boring. And indeed, I mean, we see a lot of that. And that's kind of, I think, also one of the generational changes that's happening. And we'll get to that. But let's see, Jacob, in my area, I've seen a lot of people in the mid-range of the family portrait event business quit in the past 18 months. The ones I know mostly had very stiff business and pricing models. Yeah, Jacob, I mean, if we switch gears and we talk the business side of this, I think that honestly, in my opinion, for what that's worth, I think every aspect of our photography industry, and so when I say every aspect, I mean photographers in whatever genre, whether they're doing corporate advertising, whether they're doing food, whether they're photojournalists, whether they're shooting advertising, portraits, weddings, you name it. I think that camera manufacturers, I think lighting manufacturers, accessory manufacturers, I know because of some consulting that I do with a few manufacturers, I know that they are all feeling some stress right now, which is not really a good thing for us as an industry because, like you have heard me say many, many times back when everybody was like, oh, Olympus is going to go out of business. And then it was like, oh, Nikon was going to go out of business. It would really be devastating for us to lose any of these companies. And I'm not just talking camera companies, I'm talking accessory companies, all of it. And we are going to lose some photographers, unfortunately. I watched, and some of you also may have, depending on what you were doing and where you were at in the business, but in the early 2000s, when I made the switch to digital, right about that time, I was also looking for a studio space to rent. And I ran into a gentleman who was one of my early mentors. I first met him as the manager of a camera store that I worked at as a teenager while I was in high school. And he had opened up a commercial studio in my hometown. And at the time when he opened it, my hometown just outside of Philadelphia was the location for the corporate headquarters of companies like Merck Pharmaceuticals. And back then it was called Merck, Sharp, and Dome, but it's been shortened to Merck. And it was also the corporate headquarters for a company called American Oleum Tile, which was one of the largest flooring manufacturers in the world. And one of the biggest gasoline pump manufacturers, Gasboy, also located in this town. This gentleman in his studio, he didn't have to market himself at all. He was like the only guy in town that did high-end commercial advertising work. And he shot everything from 35 millimeter on up to 8x10 format as needed. And he was a true hardcore technician. So for that type of advertising work for these companies, he was in his heyday in his business. And then in the early 2000s, digital came along and he fought it. He hated it. And I just happened to reconnect with him right about that time. And he's like, you know what? I'm hardly using. And he was angry. He was frustrated with life because he was losing all his business. These big companies that he basically wasn't having to work to find business, they were all moving their headquarters elsewhere or closing down. And smaller companies were starting to demand digital, and smaller companies were beginning to be more marketing savvy. He wasn't a computer guy, didn't understand the internet, didn't like the internet, hated the invention of social media when that came along a few years after that. And he basically gave up. So I rented his studio for best part of 10 years. Great for me. I rented it really inexpensively. He owned the building, so my rent basically covered his mortgage every week or every month, excuse me, and he was thrilled. But I watched him and a lot of photographers like him go out of business because they didn't evolve. And as much as like we don't have that big evolution right now from, film to digital like we had in the early 2000s, in the last 18, 19 months since the pandemic started, we have gone through a big evolution in terms of how people are prioritizing their spending. And when I say prioritizing their spending, I don't only mean what will people spend money on, folks. I'm talking about when they look at a photographer's work, when they meet a photographer, what are the things that are important to them that they're saying, yeah, I want to work with that photographer? Because believe me, it is not the pictures. The pictures is like the given. It's a given. You better be able to take good pictures, right? So these decisions are being based on a lot of other things. So, Jacob, I'm completely with you there. I think we're going to see a lot of photographers, especially, unfortunately, older photographers, definitely photographers my age, that are going to pack it in earlier than they normally would have, because they just haven't positioned themselves with the understanding of social media, with the understanding of digital marketing, to be able to make the transitions and make the changes. Because one thing's for sure, and this applies to photographers and it applies to manufacturers, can't keep doing the same old shit and expect different results. Not now, not with the world's at today, because that's just not going to happen, right? So let's see here. Saad, again, I love your enthusiasm. I'd love to be you when I grow older. You're a huge inspiration. Well, first of all, thank you. I sincerely appreciate that. But I have a challenge for you, okay? Don't be me. Be better than me. I'm a guy who's been very, very fortunate to spend my whole life with a camera. And I love what I do. I love the opportunity that I have to be able to share my experiences with all of you. And I am sincerely honored that it is appreciated. But be better than me. And I would advise you, I don't care who your photography idols are, please understand they all have their flaws. They've all made plenty of mistakes. So by all means, look up to them and the things that they do and their capabilities and the way they see, but set your sights beyond that. And here's why I tell you to do that. Number one, you always want to aim high. Elliot, thank you so much for the super chat, man. You always want to aim high. But also, you have an advantage over your idols that you look up to. You have an advantage over me. You have an advantage over photographers like that are more amazing than me. All of you do, especially those of you who are younger, because you are coming into this business and you're coming into photography with resources and possibilities and creative influences that never existed for a lot of us in my generation. And yeah, I hate you a little bit for that. I'm jealous. It's incredible the resources you have, right? So I'm flattered, and I will keep working until I can't do it anymore to share what I've learned and what I know. But believe me, set your sights higher, because you can. I don't even have to know you. I don't have to know what you're capable of. I know what is available to you in today's world in terms of knowledge and influence and information. And my God, use that and understand that from a creative standpoint, you can go beyond any older photographer that is out there today if you're willing to work at it. That's the key. Okay. Ken, AI noise reduction helps me use a higher ISO when using fast shutter speeds for wildlife photography. Indeed. And man, the AI noise reduction these days is like insane. In fact, I just stumbled on this, just a little side note about that. I stumbled on this the other day. DxO, the company DxO. So they're the folks that now own the Nick collection. If you use Nick Silver Effects or any of those, they also put out Photolab, which I think is what, Photolab 4 now, okay? But they have a program, DxO Raw. I think that's what it's called, DxO Raw. I did not know that that program existed. I stumbled on it the other day and was looking at some of the samples that they have for noise reduction. Wow. I mean, I don't shoot that much where I have to worry about noise. But wow, I was just blown away. And let's face it, okay? I mean, how do you think these things work so well in low light? They're using a ridiculously small sensor, even though it has 3 sensors. They're using ridiculously small sensors, right? So they don't have as many megapixels as these big full frame cameras. The pixels aren't spaced out like the big full frame cameras for gathering light. They're doing it with software, right? And I will tell you, the low light capabilities of this new iPhone are like ridiculous, like really ridiculous. So yes, the AI noise reduction is truly incredible, and what they're able to do with it at this point. And the fact that they're getting better and better and better at essentially automating that process. Wow. I mean, really, really cool. And it's good because remember, please, that ISO is kind of a misnomer in digital photography. Understand the history of ISO with digital cameras. When digital cameras were about to be made public, like Nikon, and the first cameras that they made that were pro-line digital cameras, the engineers had a choice to make, right? ISO didn't really have a place in digital technology, but they also understood, the camera manufacturers realized that if they start changing all of the things and the names and the labels and all that, that would be one more set of reasons that photographers would push back and not embrace digital cameras. So the decision was made to keep ISO as a reference number and have it work similar to the way ISO worked in film so that photographers would be comfortable making the transition. But ISO today is nothing more than software gain. It's gain, right? Because you can't change the sensitivity of your sensor. When you bought different ISO films, they had a different chemical makeup in them in term that impacted the sensitivity they had to light. Sensors don't work that way. So yes, the fact that we are kind of coming along now, 20 years later, but still, it takes time. A big part of that, obviously, the fact that we have all these AIs is simply because computers have gotten smaller, lighter, faster, right? We're able to do more processing with smaller chips that also generate less heat. Because in a small camera body, you can't have too much heat. Talk to any of these people that use Sonys and Canons that overheat when they shoot video, right? So yes, the noise reduction AI, awesome. And I think it's going to continue to get better because until they can kind of beat that problem, they're not going to be able to start talking about getting rid of ISO and simply going to a gain factor. When they get it to the point that you can start dialing in a gain of like 5, 6, 7, 8, even 10 stops and not have a loss in quality because the software is that good, then I wouldn't be surprised if we see ISO as a reference go away, right? But even if it stays, cool. The bottom line will be we won't be as afraid to go ahead and go to a higher ISO, which would be amazing. Absolutely amazing, right? All right. So, Dan, again, thank you for the super chat. Your comment here, based on NVIDIA's keynote that was delivered in full CGI and nobody noticed, I feel the future will be CGI that is indistinguishable from reality. And you know what, Dan? Look, that's certainly a possibility. So I can tell you a couple nerdy things about CGI that I pay attention to and I find really, really interesting. So number one, there is a television show now that it's on Fox. It's from kind of the same people that do like The Masked Singer and all that kind of stuff, and The Masked Dancer. It's called Alter Ego, and it's a singing show where they create computer generated avatars of these people. And just like you see in the behind the scenes for movies, the singers come in and they wear the suits with all the little dots on them for camera registration. And then they put a headset on them and they mount an iPhone in front of their face so that it can get all their facial expressions in real time. And when these people come out and perform, it's their avatar that comes out to perform. So this is all happening. Like, I mean, this is intense computer generated, material that's taking place. And then each week when one contestant gets booted, that contestant comes out and sings live with their avatar. So it's just insane what they're doing. And the avatars are very cartoony, right? But still, the fact that they're able to create that much processing, amazing. But similarly, when you talk about, we won't notice or we won't know, my wife and I watch a lot of Netflix, especially during the pandemic. We became kind of Netflix junkies on the weekends. And one of the things that Netflix and some other companies are doing now, but Netflix buys a lot of foreign films and foreign TV series, shows like Money Heist and things like that. But what they're doing with a lot of videos now, movies on Netflix, when they overdub them, they've got technology that can change the mouth movements when they do the overdubs. So you could have a film that's recorded in Spanish. So obviously, if you have a person speaking Spanish and a person speaking English and say the same exact thing, the mouth movement's going to be a lot more on the Spanish side than it is the English side in most cases. But they're able to basically run this and essentially change the mouth movements. So even though it's dubbed and sometimes the pacing is a little bit awkward, you see the mouth doing exactly what the mouth is supposed to be doing, right? So, and Jacob, yeah, I totally get that you're talking about it specifically for photography. I'm kind of throwing those examples out there as those are things that are going to filter, into photography. Who is it? IKEA. IKEA does a lot of their advertising images now via CGI. In other words, they're not real rooms. They're not real pieces of, furniture. There's been a lot of debate over the years as to whether or not Apple does some of that in their advertising images. In that sense, I know that some of the accessory companies in the photo industry, and I'm not going to call anybody out, but some of the images that they use of their products, like for their catalogs, or when you see the image on B&H and that, are actually computer generated images. They're not actual photographs. And don't get me wrong, they're not lying and misrepresenting us. They're very, very accurate. What you get is what you see, but it's not actually a photograph. And I still don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, right? Um, does that potentially put some photographers out of business? Yeah, potentially, okay? But the photographers it's gonna put out of business are, and again, I don't mean, "Oh, it's like it's okay," but I think, the ones that it's gonna put out of business are gonna be the ones that are doing kind of very standard, traditional stock, "Here's a product shot," simple, right? Um, is it possible we get to the point where computer AIs and CGI are going to be as creative as humans? I mean, I guess that's possible, right? If you watch enough sci-fi, it's certainly possible, right? Um, I don't think that's anytime in the near future, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. It's definitely technology that is becoming extremely powerful. Okay. Saad, I immediately switched to using AI and learning new tech software and giving my clients new ways to do things almost totally virtual. Yeah. I mean, again, it's for me, any new tech that's out there, um, in order to make it a part of your business and in order to make it work for you. So let's not talk about taking pictures now, but just in general, if you're running a business and if you have clients, the key to it is you want to be ahead of the curve if you can afford it. But at the same time, you don't want to get so far ahead of the curve that your clients can't keep up. Unless you're simply looking to kind of dump your existing client base and find newer, more advanced clients, then okay, that's a sound business decision. Um, I won't say any names. In fact, some of those people may be watching tonight, so I'll get myself in trouble anyway. But I've been doing virtual Zoom presentations since March of last year, 2020, when lockdown hit. And honestly, it's been kind of fun because I've been doing them all over the world. So I've been doing them in places that I'd never get to do them in person because, especially for like camera clubs, a camera club in Australia can't afford to have me travel to Australia to do a presentation, but they can afford to have me do one virtually, right? So it's kind of cool. So you would think after 18 months, and indeed after 18 months of doing these Zoom presentations, most of the time now when I log on and do these Zoom presentations, and keep in mind, camera clubs tend to be older groups of people. Most of the time I log in, these people are like Zoom pros. Everybody's in, they've got their mics muted. Every now and then you get one or two people that are still a little rough on the technology, but the moderator mutes their mics and that's it. Everything's fine. It's all good, right? I did one last night for a camera club. I won't say where, I won't say the name of the camera club, but man, these people unfortunately were so technologically inept. It was amazing. Just truly amazing. After 18 months of doing, Zoom presentations and that, I didn't think we'd actually get this presentation off the ground last night. It was a challenge. So I just share that anecdote in the sense that, yes, I've always been one that will kind of look a step ahead. Even now with my current business model, I'm in the process of making some changes. Some of them are really big changes that will surprise some of you. There will be some announcements coming in another month, November. Okay. Some of them are really small changes, kind of behind the scenes, but um, Saad, my entrepreneurial philosophy, okay, and not that I am by any means like the world's greatest entrepreneur, but I try to, be forward thinking in what I do. I have always worked with a mentality, and it's Steve Jobs that basically really made this mentality well known, but basically called break shit and move on, right? I will try things. If it seems interesting, if it seems like it has potential, I'll dive in and I'll try it. And if it doesn't, fine, stop, move on, go in a different direction. Okay. Most of you know that I started the Talk Chat Photography podcast and was going solid with it. And I haven't put out a podcast in almost 2 months now. I haven't shut it down. It's coming back. It's getting retooled. I learned a lot. I learned a whole lot doing that podcast for like 30 some episodes that I did. Okay. But along the way, I also learned more and more and more that the direction that I was going with it wasn't sustainable, wasn't going to make me money. And ultimately, which does matter, it wasn't providing as much value as I wanted it to. So, time to make some changes. Part of that was really just taking a step back, kind of reevaluating it, seeing if there was maybe an easier way to do it to eliminate some of the headaches that I was experiencing, but without lowering the quality level of it. Also, part of it was doing some research. And, I'm very committed. I think that there's actually, even in the photography world where we are visual people, right? It's all about what we see. We take pictures. But I actually think there's a tremendous amount of value in the right kind of podcast format for the photography world. Because I am a big believer, here I am on YouTube, which is very visual, right? But I'm a big believer that sometimes watching things gets in the way. Some lessons are best thought about and just heard and thought about and considered without a camera in your hand, without visuals showing you how to do things, right? So that's a big piece of kind of the space where I want to go with it and where I'm going to fit. And you know what? It's not going to be wildly popular because, sure, a lot of people, they just want to see those videos. They want to see cool gimbal shots. They want to see music. They want to see younger, much nicer looking people. They want to see all those things. And you know what? That's fine. I didn't start any of this to provide entertainment for people. I started it to really provide education and to share what I know. So I understand, I completely understand, and I understood it from the get-go that I wasn't going to have, that younger want to be entertained audience, right? So adapting is everything, and trying things and changing along the way, super, super important. That even goes back to the comments I had earlier with Jacob talking about the photographers in his area that went out of business. Unfortunately, if you're not willing to adapt, you get left behind. That's just the reality of it. And that's the lesson that goes all the way back to the dinosaurs, right? It just does. So let's see here. Where are we at? Puma, you're awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And congratulations if you got your first live stream out. Good for you. Very, very cool. Okay. Dan, I think most of the IKEA catalog is CGI, and I do believe I read that somewhere. I honestly, I don't recall exactly, but I wouldn't be surprised, and I would be willing to bet that it probably saves them a ton of money and makes a lot of sense. And if that's the case, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, that's, kind of part of the evolution, right? Let's see, from Dwayne. Joe, I watched the program on Richard Avedon, and it's making me think about my photographic style and how to grow as a photographer. What or who has shaped your style, and how do you keep evolving? Wow. That's one of those deep ones, Dwayne. So early days, my idols were David Hume Kennerly, whom I had the honor of interviewing for Talk Chat, which was amazing. Talk about, geeking out the whole time. He was in 1975, 6, 7, somewhere in there. Whenever Nixon resigned, he became the chief White House photographer under Gerald R. Ford. He won a Pulitzer Prize at, I believe, age 23 for his coverage in Vietnam. Just an incredible photographer who is still going strong today and still creating amazing images today. And he is a guy that I sincerely think of all human beings alive today. I would argue and be willing to challenge almost anybody. I believe that David Hume Kennerly is a man who has witnessed more American history than any other human being. And fortunately for all of us, he's photographed what he's witnessed, which is amazing. So David Hume Kennerly, definitely huge early influence on the photojournalism side of my work. For the fashion side of my work, my earliest influence, you'd have to Google and define it because I guarantee you probably none of you here have heard. So if any of you are going to tell me you actually know who this guy is, I'll be shocked. But his name is Francesco Scavullo. Scavullo held a record at one point, and I don't remember the exact number, but he had shot the most number of consecutive Cosmopolitan covers of any photographer in the world. He pretty much had a lock on him for tons of years. What I loved about Scavullo's work, high energy. His images always had lots of energy and emotion, and sometimes they were very bold colors, very bright colors, but also very simple. He didn't use busy backgrounds. He did a lot of shots just on solid color, seamless backgrounds, right? So it was all about color. And there's Nick Scavullo from my era. Yes, Scavullo from your era, Nick. Scavullo was just amazing. He was a big influence when it came to models and fashion and that kind of stuff. On the glamour side of things, Dwayne, one of my early influences was the guy who really defined the genre of glamour photography. And poor guy probably rolls over in his grave at least 10 times a day in today's world, because glamour photography today is not even remotely what he created. But his name is Peter Galland. He was based in Santa Monica, California. He even designed his own camera called the Galland Flex, which was just absolutely incredible. For sports, hands down, Neil Leifer, Walter Yost, two incredibly amazing photographers. Another one of my big idols, and you would recognize this from some of my non-model pictures, and that is Dr. Harold Edgerton, who's the man who came up with the strobe. He's the guy that did those amazing, and they're still amazing today, those high-speed images of a bullet going through an apple, or a bullet splitting a playing card in half, those kinds of things. And then my sense of color, two gentlemen, Peter Turner, who's no longer with us. Peter Turner, if you Google him and look at his work, he created color with Kodachrome film that was just impossible. It was just incredible what he was able to do with Kodachrome film, the color and the richness and the intensity and the simplicity of his images. His image of a trash can, a yellow trash can with a red lid on a beach, is just mind-blowing. And also Eric Miola, again, incredible color, just brilliant photography. So those were some of mine, Dwayne. But here's the thing, since you're talking about style, just one little warning. I am pretty confident if you could talk to Avedon or talk to any of these photographers that you admire, they will tell you that they didn't so much choose their style as their style chose them. So be careful about trying to select your style. You certainly can make some conscious decisions to say, I like to shoot this way, or I like to shoot that way, I like to do this. But understand that at the end of the day, your style is kind of already in you. It's actually hardwired into your brain. It's part of the way that you see things, even in terms of the colors that you like, Dwayne. Uh, Colors that you like and colors that you hate are influenced by your vision, nearsighted and farsightedness. You can Google all this stuff, folks. Don't trust some guy on YouTube. Google it, okay? So by all means, study these iconic photographers because they are iconic and their work is brilliant. But don't say, oh, I want to be an Avedon or I want to be this because I like the way they do this. Steal things from them. Steal elements from them. But not because you think it's a smart business decision, not because you think it will make your photography better, but because it really resonates with you. And then understand that once you go and start taking pictures in that vein, you're not going to be able to do what they did. And it's not because you're not good or because you don't have experience. It's because you're not them. You don't see the world through their eyes. So that's why I also say you steal things from them and then you incorporate it into what you do and you allow yourself to kind of regurgitate it in your own way. So as opposed to looking to them to figure out your style or think about your style, simply look at them as an influence and allow their work to influence the way you see things and the way you approach things. And I promise you, you will come out much stronger for it because what you will do is you will create your own style. But trust me, don't sit down and have conversations with yourself. What do I want my style to be? Worst conversation ever. Just shoot. Just shoot and 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 build a body of work. And what's going to happen is one day you're going to look over your shoulder and you're going to look at that portfolio and realize, I have a style. There it is. And you already have it. You probably just haven't shot enough yet, right? Saad, thank you so much for the super chat here. So where are we at? How do I calculate the power a flash produces? Oh, goodness. Specifically, how do I measure the power of a speed light in watts? I looked everywhere, no answer. That's because they don't measure speed lights in watt seconds. Speed lights are measured with a guide number. So actually, Sahad, I recently wrote an article. I wrote an article for Petapixel. Let me find the article here and I'll share the link with you. And you should read this because it really is kind of all about what you're talking about here. Let me see if I can... you know what? Let me do a search and I'll probably come up with it a whole lot easier. Where's the search? So this came out only just a couple of weeks ago. Whoops. And it talks about the differences between how speed lights are measured. Yep, here it is. Can we please stop talking about watt seconds since you're asking me about watt seconds? Okay. So here's an article. I wrote it. And I kind of break it down like, why it's a problem. And the reason why it's a problem, just so you understand the context, LED lights are becoming more and more popular. LED lights are becoming more and more of a standard. And I'm not saying you need to go sell all your strobes or any of that kind of stuff, right? But just saying. So yeah, so here's the link. There you go. Check that out when you get a chance. And that will help you a little bit. Okay. All right. Let's see. Charles, DxO Pure Raw. That's it. Right. So that's the DxO RAW program we're talking about, Pure RAW. Uses the AI to debayer and deblur images. And I think this is the start of computational imaging pipeline, which will one day run in camera. Charles, I completely agree with you. I mean, obviously that's the key, right? It's cool to have the extra software that you use on the back end, but the more they can fit in the camera, the better. And it's only a matter of time, right? The only thing that prevents them, you can't think about it, gang, the only thing that prevents them from like putting full-blown Photoshop in the camera is while the camera's a computer, the processor and the RAM, there's just not enough in that little space, right? So as we're able to keep making processors smaller and make it so that they put out less heat, and we're able to make RAM smaller to add to these chips, and the cameras become more powerful, I completely agree, Charles. I think that we'll see a lot of those features become automated and become AI type features. I mean, just like you're seeing with the new iPhone, and I've only played with it for a few seconds, but the whole new computational photography with the focusing, the cinematic, thing where you shoot the video clip and then afterwards in post-production, you can click on something in the foreground and it focuses on that and the background goes blurry, or you click on something in the background and it focuses on that and the foreground goes blurry. I'm not gonna lie, that's like, I could sit and do it for like an hour looking at it. Like, that's the most amazing thing ever. Like, I'm focusing my image after I take the picture. How insane is that? And I hate to tell you, like, it works, right? So we're gonna see those kind of features all across the board, right? They're gonna be kind of standard bill of fare, I think, in all gear down the road. So, all right, gang. Robert, what? Seconds? Yeah, exactly. It is 7 o'clock. Hey, listen, thank you all for participating. I wasn't sure how I was going to go because sometimes, like I ask people to give me input and it's like crickets out there. So seriously, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. And it's great when we can have open conversations and, just bat thoughts around. I love it. So, I hope to see a lot of you at the B&H presentation on Monday. Okay. I've got some special stuff planned for that. And of course, I hope to see you guys back here again next Wednesday. If you're a member of my Talk Chat Photography group on Facebook, if you're not, what the heck are you waiting for? The link's below the video down in the description. But if you remember, I'll be doing an image review tomorrow night. It's Thursday night, so I will do an image review tomorrow night. Hopefully, I will see you there. But as always, gang, stay safe, stay healthy, have a great week. Go pick up your damn camera and shoot something. I appreciate you being here, but your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios, gang. Take care.